Hi, how are you
Hello.
doing? Nice to meet you
I'm
today.
good, thank you. How are you doing, sir? Thank you so much for giving us the time for this interview. We're really excited to introduce our viewers to the great work that your company is doing.
Thanks for having me today. We can, there are a lot of interesting things that there is that is there to talk about, especially in Morocco, the things that Hashcash is doing, and the tremendous potential of the entrepreneurs and the lending platforms over there, the startups that we are working with. So it's really exciting times, and would love to discuss that with you today.
Thank you for the sentiment. So let's start a little bit by introducing your company to our readers because I'm not sure whether, especially in Morocco, like blockchain companies, they're not really that famous.
So blockchain is a new area, so I think fame takes some time to kickstart, right? So it's a culmination of many years of hard work, and then hopefully, and then a lot of luck as well, which leads to fame, right? But there's has to be a lot of significant hard work, and the impact to a lot of people that are using the products has to come. And that's what is important in any product or in anything any commercial or nonprofit does, right? So I think speaking a little bit about Hashcash, Hashcash had been in this space for 7 years now, since 2015, and we have served dozens and now hundreds of clients across the globe in at least, if I recall, at least 28 or 30 countries right now. And in the blockchain space, we are one of the leading providers, presumably the number one in at least a few areas. We offer, exchanges, payment processors. We offer traceability products. We offer lending platforms, a range of products that are used by our clients and customers. And I think the key here is what we try to do is, one of our things that are weaved into our strategy is, financial inclusion. It's a big part of what we do. We are always, trying to find avenues where we can, look at nonprofit, fundraising activities and then disbursement of funds using blockchain. Blockchain gives you a key benefit in fund disbursements for nonprofits because one of the key challenges of raising dispersing the funds that you raise as a nonprofit is that the people at the end, right, the last mile, the last leg, they're not receiving most of the funds. There's a middlemen and a lot of other parties in the middle that end up eroding the amount of funds that should, in an ideal world, reach the end party, right? And what blockchain does is it makes it very transparent. It makes it very accountable because every step in the flow of the fund is stored in an immutable ledger. And that's something, blockchain, the technology specifically brings to this world, besides so many other applications and the application of crypto by itself. So I think that's one of the core focus areas is to be able to use blockchain for humanitarian reasons, for small and medium-sized businesses, for helping out, developing countries and regions that are yet to be developed, and helping crisis regions in the case of wars, and helping women and children. That's one of the things Hashcash takes great pride in doing.
My next question was going to be what makes blockchain based financial services unique from traditional financial services, but I think that you've already answered this, especially that you focused on inclusion, which is very interesting. I want to link this to your initiative here in Morocco. It's like blockchain based pool lending, right? Please explain to us more what is this initiative is about.
So this is a micro lending platform that we are working on in Morocco. So in this, the idea is to focus on women entrepreneurs, and not with huge investment chunks, but with smaller, as it says, micro lending, and sort of helping them with their cash flow if they're running a startup business. Their startups are usually, it's one of the toughest thing in the world is to be able to make a startup work and make it successful. And we have seen many women entrepreneurs in Morocco attempting that and doing it very successfully also. And we want to join hands with them to be able to offer them the capital gaps in their operational activities, and using this micro lending platform and being able to offer them the funds using tokenized and crypto lending platforms in order for them to bridge their capital gaps in their daily business activities.
Thank you so much. My next question is about like the short-term horizon for blockchain technology. As like from the point of view of Hashcash consultant, do you see as blockchain-based financial services becoming more mainstream in the short term?
I think I certainly do, right? And now when you say short term, that makes me think a little bit, because that's a relative, way of saying so. If you mean short term, in the next 3 months, it will become mainstream. Probably not. If it would become mainstream in a year, highly likely. In 18 months or 2 years, certainly. Okay. So that's how I would say, and when I say mainstream, I would define that as many or several of the major financial institutions getting involved in blockchain-based services that use blockchain as a technology. And this is not really new, because it's already happening today. For example, when 5 years ago, in 2015-16, Hashcash did the first blockchain-based transaction between two major global banks, right? And that was in the area of remittance and trade finance, right? So it's not that the major banks are not working on blockchain. Some of them have heavily invested in blockchain. Some of them has done projects, even taken them live. Some of them has done it very quietly. Some of them are using blockchain, but they don't talk about it. And of course, there are a bunch of people that don't do much but talk about it also, right? So it's a mix of everybody in the crowd. But I think overall, I think in the blockchain world, with Hashcash or without Hashcash, there has been a lot of work being done by major institutions in the area of financial inclusion, lending, remittances, trade finance, various traceability projects done by financial institutions, or even in the manufacturing area, right? We have worked with several diamond players, the manufacturing companies, in traceability. But I think overall, this is a major transformational technology. So transformation comes with time. Transformation comes with a very strong willingness from the parties and the financial institution to bring change to this world. Financial, transformation comes from startups and small and medium-sized businesses joining hands to bring change. Transformation comes with people accepting change and moving forward for a better new world.
Thank you. Now, please correct me if I'm wrong. Like blockchain technology-based financial services. Like when we think about this, the first thing that comes to mind is cryptocurrencies, right? So basically, whenever people talk about blockchain, is somehow linked to crypto. But like through the work of your company, are you trying to disassociate the two? Are you trying do you feel that blockchain has more use than just cryptocurrency?
I will take the middle ground here, which is blockchain has numerous use cases beyond doubt. Nobody would disagree with anyone on that. But then I would say crypto is one of the strongest use cases of blockchain. Okay. Crypto is what popularized blockchain, and for a reason, right? Because it's one of the strongest use cases. In my view, if you want to, if I want to be completely direct and forthright here, blockchain, there are a lot of user or groups of people, schools of thoughts, which would, separate the two and say that, we are in favor of blockchain, but we are not in favor of crypto. I am completely against them in that school of thoughts. The reason is that a lot of people use that to address their scare of crypto transformation. A lot of governments even say that we are in favor of blockchain, but then we don't think crypto is the best thing for the world, right? But I think if you notice them, they're doing neither blockchain nor crypto. They're just evading the situation because they are scared of this change, because they think that their currency would lose value, their fiat currencies would stand less meaning if cryptos come into play, and they don't know how to address crypto compliance and regulations, and they're not taking it head on. They're not addressing the problem or the challenge of regulating cryptos. They're taking it sideways and they're letting it slide, and they're using blockchain and showing the world that they're pro technology using the word blockchain, but they're actually not working on both. Because if you love blockchain, you can't say that I'm against cryptos. That's period. There's no other statement I can. You can't say I love blockchain, I don't like cryptos.
Now, please, do you feel that, the growth of your company, the growth of your work is somehow hindered by legislative constraints that, for example, you can't penetrate more markets as long as, legislators they don't fully understand what you're doing, or they are skeptical of what your company is doing?
I do not think that change and huge transformations are going to wait for regulators. While I'm in complete favor of regulating this market, and because regulation helps in separating the bad actors from the good actors, and it's very important. But then if you look at the trends of how markets were built, large transformations came into the picture, companies were not completely waiting on regulations and regulators. Because if we were waiting on regulators, this world would be too slow, right? We would not see the transformation we have seen in the last 20 years, right? So I think the way it usually works is that companies take the step forward, they bring change, they push change, and then they work with the regulators to help them and assist them in regulating, bringing more compliance. And those are the successful ones, the good actors, who are looking at this on a very long-term scale, right? Those are the people that needs to come forward and help the regulators build regulatory and compliance guidelines and frameworks. And that's happening today. The successful blockchain and crypto companies are working with regulators today. Some regulators are very friendly, some are not. But then, there is a ripple effect, there is a domino effect. When one country regulates, the other country looks at them, learns from them, and then the pace of progress eventually improves, right? And then eventually you'll see in a span of 5 or 10 years, the world has adopted it, and then we do not even know that we are using blockchain and crypto in our daily lives. We don't even speak about it. It becomes so natural to us. So transformation is the greatest of the transformations are such that are not talked about anymore, right? We use artificial intelligence in so many things, but we don't call it artificial intelligence anymore, right? It's part of our daily lives. And that's how transformation takes place. It's not going to wait for regulators. It's a collaboration of the early adopters, the companies that aggressively bring the transformation, and they working with the regulators and joining hands to bring compliance and regulatory frameworks that eventually gets adopted by, as a ripple across the world, and then people accepting them.
Now, there is something very interesting about thinking about legislate or adopting blockchain technology into any country, because if we think about it, the concept itself is kind of revolutionary. When I think about the blockchain, or when I'm writing an article, I always refer to the Swift, because it's the closest thing we can as a metaphor to help people understand blockchain. But then the Swift is like a club of rich banks. But then we have the blockchain, which is a space that anyone can access and verify transactions. Do you feel that this in itself, it can go both ways? Either banks are going to be forced to make their transactions more transparent, or at a certain point, they will stop the adoption of blockchain, or they will adopt it, but they will just adopt the things that will not affect their monopoly over financial services.
The banks or any incumbent in the industry, they want to hold on to what they do. It's common. And usually they are not very pro change. That's the trend that we have seen. And I think anybody would agree to that. If I'm holding in, a space, I don't want to invite change. I don't want to cannibalize my own business. I want to stay where I am, and I want that to last, right? But understand that changes are strong, and they're not going to be easy to resist. So change happens when you do not have an option. Change happens when the existing people see that it's a matter of survival because they will be disrupted. Okay. And blockchain is a technology that will disrupt the existing incumbents in the financial industry if they do not either work towards it, make the changes, and align themselves with the change, and they better do it, and they are very smart, they will do it, right? For example, you see BP or British Petroleum, or any of the oil companies now saying we love solar, right? They start by criticizing it strongly. That's the starting point. So now they're paying attention to it, right? Their CEOs come along and say, crypto is the worst thing in the world. We can't lead a world with the sun's energy, right? Just using an analogy there. That's the first step. Now they're lying, okay? Now they're paying attention and they're lying because they want to slow down the pace of change so that they have enough time to make the change internally and align themselves to it, right? So that's the first step. They start out by saying it's the worst thing in the world. It's not going to help the world. Then over the years, they take that time to gradually align themselves and they start talking about it favorably, or they just start doing it. You see the CEO of JP Morgan, classic example. He says that crypto is the worst thing in the world, and he comes back and does it himself. And now he's saying I'm ready now, so it's all good, right? You see Warren Buffett saying that crypto is the worst thing in the world because all his money is in US dollars, right? So naturally, it's not good for him. So, and you see a range of incumbents that tend to say that any need change is bad, and it's a tendency, unless they are ready to reap the benefits from it. So now blockchain and crypto is a technology that is so transformative and it's so revolutionary, and the benefits are so clear, it's not an option for them. They know it. So what they're going to do is they're going to take the time and make the changes and try to cope up, right? And in this whole ride, you will see the rise of 2 or 3 or 5 great companies that have created something parallel, and they are taking the large banks head on, right? But these large banks are not going to go bankrupt or vanish overnight. They have money, they have capital, they have resources. They're going to try to adapt to it, and eventually many of them would do just fine, and some of them would do not adapt fast enough, would perish, would no longer be existing in the market, and they'll be replaced by the disruptors, right? And that's how every new technology has trends that happen in the last 20 years or more.
Which country is ahead in the game? Which country do you see that has so much potential in terms of blockchain technology, and that they have already taken, let's say, the legislative and all the necessary measures to see like blockchain technology, blockchain financial service-based technology flourish?
It's difficult to just say name one country that's on the top of the list. And even if they make it to some list, there might be other countries that are ahead in some other areas, right? So the way I will answer that is, I think usually a lot of the smaller islands who are trying to attract new businesses and capital are usually, they start off early and fast, and they tend to keep it very friendly to the business because the major goal is to have the flow of capital come in, right? Now, then there are countries that are large and complex, right? And those countries take some time, even if they have progressive regulators, but they take time, right? Then there are countries that are autocratic, okay? There are countries that have, one person in charge of the country. It's not democratic, and those countries have historically, as in the last few years, have taken a stand sometimes against cryptocurrencies because they are scared the most, because they want to hold on to their power, autocratic power, and sometimes such rulers are not thinking about the people; they are thinking about themselves, right? And in a democracy, changes come slow. Some democracies have progressive regulators, and they are financially driven, which is usually good. For example, a tax authority in the United States of America is thinking that, okay, this business comes in, my tax revenue are going to grow, which is not a bad thing because they take actions, they move progressively. And then there are slower democracies like maybe India or some of the other democracies which usually end up through an iterative process taking the right decisions, but they are slower, right? Because there's a lot of consensus, happening, right, across the regulatory bodies and organizations. So those things take time. So it's a process. It's not one silver bullet. It's not one country that's the best at it. It's various economies and the nature that they are built, progressing in their own ways. And if you want to categorize them, there are, the progressive, democracies, the democracies that are slightly slower moving, and then there are smaller islands, and then there are autocratic countries. So I tend to look at them in these four categories, right? And each of them are doing things in their own way to make progress. Now, some are resisting now, but eventually, as they see the rest of the world get into it, there'll be again a domino or ripple that would lead to the adoption of blockchain and cryptos across the globe without any exception.
Sounds logical. Now, my next question is, whenever people oppose to cryptocurrency, and mostly people who oppose to cryptocurrency, they have never heard of blockchain. So I'm just going to say that their criticism for crypto also applies to blockchain. They mentioned the example of how crypto or blockchain can be used for money laundering, even though that doesn't really make sense given that in the blockchain everything is verified by all members. What would you say to those people?
I think blockchain gives a level of transparency that is unmatched by any technology or any financial system that we have in existence today. Okay, so I asked them one simple question to begin with. Do you know which currency in the world is used the most for money laundering, pornography, abuse, and all kinds of illegal activities, firearms, illegal firearms? Which is the currency that's used the most in the world? And it's a very simple answer. It's the United States dollar, right? Okay. So does that mean that we're going to criticize the dollar, or should we criticize the people who are using it in the wrong ways? So that's the answer to their question. It's not the technology. It's not cryptos. It's the people that are acting in a wrong way, using it in the wrong way, and using it for illegal activities. And if you want to stop that, you have to be Machiavellian. You can't say, I'm not going to look at it. It'll automatically vanish. You have to know what it is. You have to know what wrongs they're doing. You have to regulate them. And the only way to stop a black market is by means of regulating it. Okay. We have seen in the era of bootlegging, the term bootlegging, right, when alcohol was, illegal, and that's when, it had the largest black market. So if you want to stop a black market, if you want to separate the bad actors out, punish them, penalize them, you need to bring regulations. You need to understand what's going on and act in a way that, that is in the greater good of the world. So most of this comes from lack of understanding of how things have happened in this world, lack of understanding of technology, and sheer lack of interest and energy to understand something new and be quick on your feet to criticize something because you don't understand it.
I see. Makes perfect sense, sir. Now, my following question, don't you think that, regulating the blockchain sphere is going to be counterproductive, given that a lot of people, especially young people, they flock to blockchain because somehow it's inherently revolutionary. It's something that is decentralized. It's more democratic. It's, the governments can follow you there. And we've seen this, as soon as some countries edge towards even talking about regulating cryptocurrency, we see that exchanges leave those countries. I'm not saying that they were doing something bad. I'm just saying that the principles of blockchain or of cryptocurrency somehow, like the found people who founded or who used the technology in the first place for crypto purposes, they didn't want it to be something that the government has hands on.
I do not see why governments, regulators, companies, and people and decentralization cannot come together. Okay, so the idea behind blockchain and crypto is spreading the power in the hands of many instead of a few, because it is not, the idea may not be complete anarchy, right? So it is important to understand that when you regulate crypto and blockchain, right, it doesn't take away the power of decentralization. Regulation does not mean complete government control. Regulation means maintaining an ecosystem where we are able to identify the bad actors. We are able to understand what bad actions mean, right? And reduce the scams that are happening in the crypto and blockchain world, which are quite a many, I would say, still. And then the reason for that are mostly regulators, I would say, because they're not being progressive, they're not being fast enough to build regulations. So I do not think that regulations and decentralization cannot go hand in hand. I do not think one is the antonym of the other. They can very well work as complementary forces, and for a much better world where you have the distribution of power in the hands of many, not in the hands of the government or a few companies, but many small and medium-sized businesses in the hands of people, as well as part of it in a good way in the hands of the government as well, where they are able to separate the bad actors and penalize and work towards a world where it's more balanced, right? So it's a fine line. It's always the fine line between stability and anarchy, right? And I think decentralization and regulators and regulations and compliance can work together to bring that better world.
Okay, that was beautifully said, sir. Thank you so much. Do you have anything more to add? And before that, I have another question. Do you see your company in the future, like launching more projects in Morocco? And how has it been so far, like launching that initiative here?
That's what we do. I mean, Hashcash is a company that is constantly striving to bring groundbreaking changes to the world. We use blockchain in different ways, ranging from working with life science and biology and genome sequencing. We work in using blockchain, the power of blockchain transparency and data. We use it in different ways in philanthropy, in fund disbursements, in nonprofit organization fund disbursements. We work in reducing the cost of moving capital, which ultimately benefits the consumer, because blockchain gives you the power to eliminate the middlemen, do a lot of things peer-to-peer, because the technology itself is doing the job of validation, right? So one of the core things that blockchain does is validates double spending, right? So it stops double spending. So it ensures that money that you have paid somebody, you're not using it to pay somebody else, which is what the banks do, right? They basically put the stamp of trust to your ledger that they manage and maintain, and you give them that trust. That's what a bank does. Here, it is replacing the banks and the middlemen in that particular function to create a world that's more efficient, it's more peer-to-peer, and the job of trust is done by the decentralized network, which does a great job, by the way, more than any one institution, in bringing trust to the network and in bringing trust to the transactions, right? So Hashcash is all about, putting blockchain to work. That's what we do. We want blockchain not to be a talking point. We want blockchain adoption. We want the world to adopt blockchain. That's why we collaborate with companies selflessly. We are not a company that is, always thinking of competing. We are a company that's looking at collaboration because, for a selfish reason, which is that's the job of a leader. A leader works selflessly with many people to bring change. It's not about yourself, but it's about the change that you bring to the world.
Thank you so much for your time. I have no more questions. Do you have anything more to add?
I think we had a great conversation today. It was an absolute pleasure, talking to you. Thank you for having me on the call today. I always, love to discuss blockchain. I have been a teacher of blockchain. I've been speaking in many conferences, and it's always exciting for me to be talking about blockchain with someone. And today's conversation was an excellent example of that.
Thank you so much, sir. I've honestly learned a lot, and I will make sure to pass on as much of this knowledge as I can to our readers.
Thank you so much, and I have learned a lot answering the questions as well from you today.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Looking forward to maybe talking to you another time as well. Thank you.
Of course.
Have a nice day.
Bye.
Take care. Bye now.